Hi everyone, welcome back after the summer. It's so great to be with you again. I hope whatever you were doing, whether you managed to make it away or not, you had a really great time, maybe with your family. And I know that you're going to be going back to school. I hope you've had a good week, regardless of what it's been like. God is still good. Now this Sunday we're looking at another psalm. This is Psalm 1. I'm going to think about that in just a minute. But before we do, we're going to have a little bit of time thinking about choices. Because there are lots of times where we have to make a choice between two things. And often those things depend on the outcome of the choices that we make. You know, some decisions are quite small. Like maybe you have to decide whether you want to go play football or hockey. Maybe you have to decide if you want to have a friend come over to play or if you want to go over to your friend's house. Well, we're presented with a choice in the psalm today, but the choice that's being presented is a massive one, because this choice is about how we're going to live our lives. And there's a pretty big outcome to that choice. In a minute, you're going to read Psalm 1, and you will see that the writer presents Israel with one choice of two ways to live: the way of righteousness or the way of wickedness. Now, the writer says that the person who chooses to live in the way of righteousness will be blessed. This means ultimate happiness, lasting happiness, life, peace, good things from God. But there is another way, the way of wickedness. Now, some people choose this path, and this isn't a path of blessing. It's not a path of happiness. It's not a path of peace or joy, and it certainly isn't a path of life. In fact, as the psalmist tells us, the people who are on this path will not stand on Judgment Day. Only one way brings true happiness. Only one way brings life. This is the way of righteousness, the psalm tells us. This is the way that leads to happiness and life. But how do we know which path is which? How do we know to choose between the two paths? Well, I've got something that I think might help us to understand. So here, I've got two glasses, and they've both got liquid in them. Now, they look quite similar, but in fact they're totally different. You see, one of these glasses is filled with juice. Clean, good for you juice. And this represents the way of righteousness. Now, if you were to drink that juice, you would get all of the goodness from it. You'd be nourished, it would quench your thirst. But actually the other glass, well, that's filled with bleach. Certainly not good for you, not something you should ever drink. To drink that would be to do yourself serious harm. In fact, it might even kill you. But how can we know the difference between these two glasses? How do I know which one is juice or which one is bleach? Well, we would need someone to tell us, wouldn't we? We would need someone to instruct us. Just like in life, we need someone to tell us about the way of righteousness, about the way of life. Now, the psalmist knows this, and he shows us that the way to know life, the way to know the way of righteousness, well, that is to delight in the law of the Lord. He says you need to meditate on it. That means you've got to read it and think about it and do it. The way of righteousness is found in God's law. The way of righteousness is found in the Bible. It is God's word that brings true happiness. This is the way of the righteous. Now, wonderfully for us, we have the person who was perfectly righteous. We have the person that always walked in the way of righteousness every day of his life. We know that is Jesus. And if we put our trust in him, if we are Christians, we are in him, And so we can be on that way of righteousness with him, not the way of wickedness. Because it is God's word that brings true happiness. This is the way of the righteous.